Taoiseach, last night I watched prime time while I suspect most people here and elsewhere were watching the football, and they dealt with the question of strategic housing developments. It was really interesting to watch it because what they showed was that that policy was clearly a failure of enormous proportions, and it's good to see that it's been scrapped in October. However, there have been a plethora of developments allowed to go ahead under the strategic housing development, including one they touched on, which is the Player Wills Bailey Gibson site on the South Circular Road, which will have heights of 19, 13 and 8-storey apartments, and all of them built to rent. The same is true along the Grand Canal between Drimna and Bluebell. An extra 4,000 will be added to the population, which already struggles to access schools, doctors and basic amenities. No libraries, no swimming pools, no basic amenities. It's crazy that we plan to add thousands into communities and then blame the communities for taking judicial reviews. They don't do it lightly. Judicial reviews are hugely expensive. They do it because their voices have been squashed out. Now, it's good to see they're being ended, but what about the ones that have already been granted? And do you not think it's time for the state to intervene and say, no, we can't have this? And particularly to intervene in terms of the planning. If planning goes ahead without strategic infrastructure being in place, communities are squeezed out. And that's why they protest, that's why they object. They're not stupid, they're doing it for the benefit of all.
In respect of the deficiencies of private sector operators. We can't be the taxpayer cannot be the last resort that just mops up everything. But we are, and there's a lot of work being done, obviously in relation to the MICA scheme and in terms of the pilot schemes and other issues in terms of fire safety and so forth. And in terms of the strategic housing developments, I don't think the legal capacity is there to retrospectively disapply permissions that were granted. But Minister O'Brien has been committed for quite some time to ending those. They are now being ended. Again, in terms of some of what's been striking is how few of them have actually followed through in terms of being developed in many cases. So I think one of the issues that Housing for All will be looking at and so on, how do we get projects back on track in terms of getting them developed? There's lots of permissions out there. Now, I'm not talking about just STs, just generally speaking, there's lots of projects out there that haven't been developed at all. And at the moment, show no signs of development. And particularly, like the entire environmental... failure. The entire environmental approach in terms of compact cities, for example. You know, the agenda there would be to activate brownfield sites to create housing opportunities within cities, okay? But the costs are proving particularly difficult. And the constant refrain back from the sector is they're not viable from a cost perspective. Yet from a public transport perspective, from a services perspective, it makes sense to try and revitalise inner city brownfield sites. But that is proving particularly challenging, to be frank, in terms of getting a model in place that would release the potential for the development of large-scale apartments at affordable costs. And I'm just saying what people who are in the field, building are saying they can't do it. I don't know whether they're right or wrong, whether the bona fides are, they're saying they can't, and they haven't been. That is reality in terms of brownfield sites. We haven't had the development that we would have wanted over the last time. We're going to look at how we can get town centre first approach in terms of towns.
You should watch the prime time programme.
In cities, in terms of, you've got to listen to deputies, to people who actually are out there in the field trying to get projects off the ground as well. Because all I hear is, well, yeah, people are going to build to make profit. I mean, you do need a private sector as well.
We don't need houses for profit.
We're not going to get to 30 or 40,000 houses a year if we don't have a balance between state-driven social housing, state-supported affordable housing, and and private sector development as well.
Why?
You're not going to get there. Why? It simply will not happen.
I've got to interrupt now.
I think Deputy